She came to me at twilight, as the last sliver of sun slipped behind the dead cliffs of Valerian. Her silhouette stood tall against the failing light, her cloak dusted with ash from the volcanic winds that plagued the outer wilds. Mortals rarely wandered so close to the borderlands, let alone alone. But she was no mere traveler. No, I smelled it on her skin. Curiosity, desire, a hunger that rivaled my own. From the shadows of the ruined chapel, I watched her. A quiet ruin overrun with wild roses and crumbled altars. Once sacred, now mine. Her eyes moved over the broken stained glass, her hand grazing the vine-covered pews, unaware of the predator above. I could feel her pulse even from a distance, the sweet flutter of it echoing through my ancient bones, the song I had forgotten. Every beat whispered temptation. I descended in silence, my boots not steering a single pebble. Her back was to me when I stepped behind her, my breath against her neck, a whisper of frost. She didn't flinch. She only tilted her head, exposing her throat with a grace that made my dead heart throb. She knew. I didn't need to speak. She welcomed the touch of my hand as it traced her collarbone. Cool fingers against warm flesh. Her skin was velvet beneath my palms, flesh with a rush of blood that raced in anticipation. She leaned into me, as though she belonged in my arms, as though fate itself had wound her path to mine like a coiled ribbon. The scent of her desire was thick in the air, sweeter than any wine, more intoxicating than any spell. I drew her cloak from her shoulders. She let it fall, baring herself to the cold and to me. The fire in her gaze did not waver. She wanted to be devoured. She wanted to give herself to the dark. Our bodies found rhythm in the shadow of the altar, the storm outside rising to match our fever. I buried my face against her neck, teeth grazing the skin that throbbed with promise. My hands roamed, possessive, reverent. Her gasps were the prayers I longed for across centuries. There was no shame between us, only surrender. And yet beneath every kiss, every gasp, every tremble was the promise of the end. She knew what I was, and she came anyway. She offered herself fully, not just her body, but her soul. That was what drew me, what made her unlike the others. She wasn't afraid of the darkness. She invited it. And so, I gave her what she came for. When the moment crested, when her body arched, trembling with pleasure and abandon, I sank my fangs into her throat. The first taste was ecstasy. Warm, copper-sweet life flowed into me like molten gold. moan broke into a sigh, and her fingers clutched at me as though she might fall away without my embrace. I drank slowly, reverently, feeling her life spill into mine. She didn't struggle. She offered everything until her strength waned, until her pulse slowed beneath my lips, until the last flicker of her soul dissolved into me like a candle going out in the wind. She collapsed in my arms, weightless and serene, lips parted in a final breathless smile. I laid her down among the roses and kissed her still warm brow. Her blood sang through my veins, her essence now woven with mine. In giving herself fully, she had become something eternal, memory, a hunger, a flame that would never die within me. I am a creature of the night, a monster some say, but in that moment, I was also her lover, her end, her forever, and she was mine. They say the dead do not dream, but I dreamed of her. Nights split into centuries, and still, her face haunted the quiet between heartbeats. Her scent lingered in the dust of the chapel long after her body grew cold in my arms. I buried her beneath the stone altar, wreathing her in roses as crimson as the blood she gave me. She had come willingly, and I thought I had given her a beautiful end. But ends, like mortals, lie. It began on a moonless night. The wind shifted wrong, too still. The chapel candles flickered, though no breath stirred the air. I felt it before I saw her. A tremor in the dark, a pulse in the earth beneath me. My kind knows the feeling of rising death, but this was not death. This was rebirth. She stepped from the shadows as though she's always belonged there. The same body, the same eyes, but her gaze no longer held the warmth of a heartbeat. It held hunger. Not desperation, no. This was something more ancient, something regal. The blood I took had not killed her. It had changed her, twisted her soul into something that defied even my understanding. I should have fallen to my knees. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her presence gripped me by the throat, an intoxicating authority that unsettled even the darkness inside me. She wore her mortality like a memory, forgotten, shed. What returned to me was not the girl who once moaned beneath my touch. No, this was something older, as though my bite had awakened the god buried inside her. She approached, silent as breath. My lips parted to whisper her name, but I no longer knew what to call her. Her hand touched my chest, and the cold fire that bloomed there was unlike anything I had felt in centuries. She smiled, not kind, not cruel, but knowing, the way a flame knows the wick. Then she kissed me. It was not like before, no. No slow tease, no trembling needed. It was command. Her lips claimed mine, and I tasted not just blood, but power. My knees buckled as her fingers tangled in my hair, pulling me down into submission. She was no longer mine. I was hers. Our bodies met again, this time with roles reversed. I, once predator, became prey beneath her mouth, her nails, her will. She drank from me, as I had once drank from her, but not from my throat, no. She took from deeper places. She consumed something I couldn't name, something I had never known I held. Pleasure tangled with pain, and I gave willingly. Because I understood now, this was the real gift. Not death, but transformation. Not love, but becoming. When it was over, she stood above me, blood dripping from her lips like rubies. Her eyes glowed faintly in the candlelight, feral, divine. I lay there, spent and reverent, the taste of her still burning on my tongue. She said nothing as she turned and vanished into the dark, the roses at the altar blooming in her wake. She had returned. Not as a ghost, not as a lover, but as something far, far greater. And the night, ever hungry, had finally found its queen. I found her again, wreathed in moonlight and silence. Not the village girl, the other, her, my queen. She moved through the forest like a shadow given flesh, more divine with each passing night since her rebirth. The wind didn't touch her. The earth seemed to hold its breath beneath her feet, and I, who had once tasted her moans like sacred wine, could do nothing but follow. She had no need of me now, and yet I could not stay away. I watched her from the trees as she came upon the girl. A peasant, barefoot, hair sunlit and tangled, hands stained from plucked berries, she knelt at a stream, lips parted in song, utterly unaware of the storm stalking toward her in velvet skin and crimson eyes. The queen circled her like a panther, trailing fingers along her throat and her spine. I smelled the girl's innocence, a heady perfume, her heartbeat like a rabbit's in tall grass. I wanted to taste it, to break it, but this was not my hunt. It was hers, and God help me, I wanted to see her feed. The girl fell to her knees at the queen's command, trembling in awe. I felt a growl rise in my throat, jealous, feral, but bit it back down. This wasn't jealousy. It was worship. She kissed the girl, slow and sure, like claiming land with a flag. The girl moaned into her mouth, her thighs trembling, her hands fisting in the queen's silken gown. I ached watching them. My heart raced as her dress slid down, bearing the curve of her hip, the swell of her breast, and the divine cruelty of her mouth. She took the girl to the moss, undressed her like a lover, touched her like a priestess. Her body moved with grace that could unmake gods. Her hands were cruel and gentle by turns, coaxing cries from the girl until she arched and writhed beneath her, undone by pleasure no mortal had ever known. I had heard those sounds before, on her lips, long ago, when she was mine. And now, she gave them to another. But then came the moment I waited for. Her mouth found the girl's throat, not just to kiss, but to give. I felt it like a jolt through my bones. She wasn't draining her. She was offering the dark gift. My breath caught. Her blood, my blood once, flowed into the girl like wildfire. I saw in the way her back bowed, The way her scream shattered the trees, the way her eyes glazed and then burned. She was being unmade, remade, pulled from the soft cradle of mortality and forged into something eternal. I stepped from the trees at last, just as the girl collapsed into her maker's arms. The queen looked up at me, her lips wet with shared blood, her expression unreadable. "She's mine now," her eyes said. "Do you understand?" I dropped to my knees before them both. Yes, I understood. The village girl, reborn and glistening in the moonlight, opened her eyes. Crimson, sharp, a predator's eyes. She looked at me with hunger, awe, and something else. Deference. She reached for the queen again, like a flower bending toward the sun, and I watched them kiss, slow, possessive, victorious. My queen had taken a consort, not to replace me, but to begin something greater, and I would serve them both. The moon hung heavy that night, low and swollen, like an eye that dared to watch what no god should. They came in silence. My queen first, robed in midnight and roses, her lips still stained with yesterday's hunger. Her presence hit me like perfume and thunder, and I fell to one knee without command. I would have laid my throat bare at her feet had she asked, but she only smiled. Behind her came the fledgling. The girl I had once watched squirm beneath her touch now walked with the same slow, serpentine grace. Still new to the dark gift, but already exquisite. Her eyes glowed garnet in the candlelight. Her bare feet made no sound across the chapel stone. She wore nothing but a veil of transparent silk and hunger in her gaze. Tonight, she would feed, but not alone. The queen reached for me first, her fingers slipping beneath the collar of my shirt, cool against the fire of my skin. Her nails raked down my chest, carving reverence into flesh. I shuddered. She had turned me inside out once, centuries ago. She would do it all again tonight, with another at her side. "I want to watch her take you," she whispered. The fledgling knelt before me. There was no fear in her, only desire, bright and sharp. Her hands explored me as though I were ancient scripture, careful, curious, but insistent. My breath caught when her lips grazed my throat, the same spot her mistress had once claimed. I bared it willingly. Let her earn eternity. She kissed my neck, suckled it, tasted sweat and memory. Her fangs pierced like a lover's teeth in climax. I groaned, but not in pain. My blood pulsed against her tongue. She drank slowly, trembling at first, then bold. Her hands gripped my thighs, possessive now. Above us the queen watched, eyes burning, and then she joined. Her mouth met mine in a kiss that shattered time, while her fingers claimed her consort, guiding her rhythm as she fed. I could feel both of them, one drawing blood from me, the other breath, the queen's tongue sliding into my mouth as the girl moaned around my pulse. It was holy, profane, perfect. I took the fledgling in my arms, lifting her from her knees, turning so she straddled my lap. The queen pressed behind her, their bodies sliding together like silk and fire. Hands tangled, tongues met, nails scored flesh. We became a single shape, 3 bodies in rhythm, need driving us deeper than any mortal pleasure could fathom. I entered her slowly, even as she fed. The queen whispered in her ear, told her how to move, when to take more, and when to stop. But the fledgling didn't stop. She was ravenous, and so was I. And so was she. When we climaxed, it was as one. My seed, her blood, the queen's cry, all spilled into the stone and shadowed that secret ruin. We collapsed, tangled and trembling, slick with sweat, want, and crimson. The queen lay between us, arms around both. Her voice was a purr in the dark. Now we begin, she says. And the roses bloomed anew, fed by blood, by lust, by the promise of nights yet to come. The village stood quiet beneath a swollen moon. Lanterns dimmed, windows shuttered. Yet no one could hide from what stalked the edge of dream. We moved like smoke. The queen led, barefoot through the meadow, her hair unbound and wild. Behind her came the fledgling, cloaked in a sheer crimson wrap that kissed her thighs and shimmered with dew. I followed in silence, not as master, but sentinel, guardian of the flame we lit between our lips. She would feed tonight, and this time, it would not be from us. The queen had chosen a prey, a nobleman's son, fresh-faced and bored with his own privilege. He fancied himself a poet, a collector of rare things. He had never known what it meant to be hunted. We entered his estate like shadows slipping through silk. The queen found him in a solarium, half drunk, fingers stained with ink, his latest verse fluttering beside him like shed petals. He looked up as we appeared, 3 figures out of myth, too radiant to be real. Gods, he whispered. The fledgling stepped forward. Closer, the queen whispered behind her. He rose and chanted before a single spell had been spoken. The fledgling approached, her eyes glowing with gentle hunger. She sat in his lap, as if she belonged there, straddled him, pressed her fingers to his lips. "Do you want something beautiful?" she asked. He nodded, desperate. "Then give," she said. And give he did. He gave his mouth, first open and eager as she kissed him with slow, deliberate hunger. Then his throat, exposed as she trailed her tongue down to the pulse beating fiercely beneath his skin. Her fangs hovered. She looked back at us, and the queen nodded once. The bite was clean, perfect. Her body pressed flush to his as she fed, hips grinding in rhythm with his weakening heartbeat, her moan a chime in a quiet room. I watched, hard and entranced, as the life drained from him and bloomed within her. He gasped her name once, though she had never spoken it. And then he sighed and was still. She withdrew, lips flushed, breath unsteady. The queen took her by the chin, kissed the blood from her mouth. "You've tasted death now," she said. "Not just what you are, but what you can do." The fledgling turned to me. "I want more." God help me. I did too. We left the body where he lay, a thing of beauty, empty like a chalice. Outside, the wind steered through the trees. The fledgling walked between us, her steps stronger now, her eyes burning, brighter. She was no longer prey. She was a predator, And this world, so full of soft hearts and open throats, would soon learn her name. They became too bold. We all did. Night after night, we danced through their streets, dripping with blood and beauty, our trio unchallenged. They whispered of angels and devils, saints and succubi. Some locked their doors, others left them open. But fear does not slumber forever, and neither do men. It began with a scream. A girl, barely 15, found her brother pale and cold in his bed, throat torn, eyes wide in the ecstasy of death. The priest said it was demons. The mayor called for torches. The blacksmith melted iron into stakes. They came without warning. That night, the fledgling insisted on hunting alone. She wanted the thrill, the challenge. The queen hesitated. I did not. I should have. She slipped into the tavern under silken moonlight, luring a drunkard to the edge of the wood. He was already hard with anticipation, already half hers, when the trap closed. Net, chain, fire. They descended like wolves. She fought. God, she fought. Her scream split the trees as iron bit into her arms, as fire seared her flesh. She crushed the soldier's throat in her fists, tore the jaw from another. There were too many, and she was still young. They dragged her through the streets like a devil caught mid-ritual. Her robe burned from her skin, hair tangled and wild, blood dripping from her mouth. She spat, she cursed, and still they dragged her, naked, snarling, to the chapel steps. The townsfolk gathered like crows. The stake was already waiting. We felt it. The queen froze mid-step, her head jerking toward the town square, lips parting in a silent scream. I saw it too. Her consort, her fledgling, our firebrand, and like meat to a tree, splinters of blessed wood pressed against her chest. The priest raised his hand and drove the stake through her. I howled. The queen collapsed. Blood poured from her nose, her mouth, her eyes. Sympathy, pain, the agony of a bond torn savagely. I caught her before she fell fully, my arms shaking. Her screams echoed through the hills, shaking birds from trees. They had taken her from us. They had made a martyr out of our love. They had turned a hunt into a war. I kissed the queen's brow, my fangs bare now, rage drowning reason. Say the word, I whispered. She rose, and her voice was no longer just a queen's. It was a curse. Earn their heaven, she said. Bring me every soul. We came at dusk, not cloaked in shadow this time, but in fire. The queen walked through the mist in silence, her bare feet blackened with soot, her hair braided with thorn. Her gown was torn, blood-drenched, more war banner than garment. I trailed behind her, sword unshaved, flame coiling in my palm like a loyal beast. We did not glide. We marched. The town of Gruffalo rose ahead, lanterns flickering in ignorance. Bells chimed from the chapel spire, the same spire beneath which they had staked her. Our fledgling, our beloved. The queen didn't speak. She hadn't since that night. Her grief had curdled into something monstrous, something holy. She no longer wept. She no longer slept. She simply burned. We crossed the threshold of the outer village with no stealth. The guards at the gates barely had time to scream. Her power lashed from her like a storm, shattering skulls, imploding ribs, boiling blood to steam inside their flesh. The first house went up in flame with a flick of my wrist. And so began the reckoning. They tried to pray. They tried to run. They tried to fight with torches and iron and trembling hands. But they had sinned against blood. And we were the judgment. The queen hunted with precision, moving door to door, face blank, expressionless, her fangs bared only when she tore. Children screamed, fathers fell, mothers begged, and she heard none of it. Only the blood called. Only she did. We reached the chapel at midnight. It stood still amid the chaos, its cross blackened by soot, its bell silent now. The altar was scorched, the holy water tainted with red, but it was what lay beneath that held her. We descended into the catacombs. The stench of sanctified death choked the air. Candles flickered low, casting cruel shadows along the stone, and there, chained in silver, half naked, throat stitched with rusted wire, was our fledgling. She lived. God forgive us. She lived. But it was no longer her. Her eyes glowed dimly, unfocused, lips curled back into a snarl, her limbs spasmed, twitching with unnatural tics. She hissed at the queen, at us. There was no recognition, no longing or no love, only instinct, hunger, madness. The queen fell to her knees. I did not touch her. I dared not. She crawled to the girl, her voice cracking for the first time in nights. My flame, my joy, come back. But the fledgling shrieked, a feral guttural sound, and lunged, her chain straining. The queen kissed her forehead, and then drove her own claws through the girl's chest. The scream that left the fledgling's throat was not of pain, but it was release. Her body shuddered once, then twice, and then lay still. The queen held her, rocking her like a broken doll, her face blank as the ashes above. She's free, I whispered. No, the queen said. We are. We left the chapel in silence. The village still burned, but what began as vengeance ended not in fury, but grief. That night, we bathed in blood, but we slept with ghosts. The village was gone. What wasn't burned to cinder, drowned in blood. Smoke curled lazily into the stars, carrying the scent of charred prayers and broken gods. Nothing steered now, nothing dared, but we remained. In the ruins of the chapel, I found her. The queen sat atop the altar where she had first taken me centuries ago, her gown in tatters, her mouth stained with blood of priests and children alike. The wind pressed curls of ash against her cheek, soft as snow. She didn't move when I approached, didn't speak, only stared at the place where her fledgling had died a second, final death. I went to my knees before her. There was no crown on her brow tonight, but I bowed just the same. I should have stopped her, I whispered. No, she said, voice like cracked marble. I should have let her burn. The pain was too large to name, too deep to speak. So we didn't. We acted. Her hands reached for me with no gentleness. Her fingers toward the fastening of my shirt, nails, breaking skin, drawing lines of blood. I gasped, more in gratitude than pain. She pulled me to her mouth like she needed me to breathe, her kiss bruising, brutal. I welcomed it. My hands found her thighs, still trembling from fury. I spread them, stood between them, lifted her like she weighed nothing. She bit my lip hard enough to bleed. I groaned against her neck, fangs dragging across the skin she had once let me taste. But tonight, this wasn't seduction. It was ritual. We made like wolves, teeth bared, snarling, desperate. Her nails dug into my shoulders as she rocked against me, hips grinding with a rhythm that had nothing to do with love and everything to do with survival. Her grief poured into me with every cry. Mine answered in every thrust. We shattered the altar beneath us, splinters of old gods embedded into our backs. She threw her head back as she came, screaming into the smoke-choked rafters. Her eyes were wild, glowing, tears mingling with blood on her cheeks. I held her as my own climax ripped through me, savage and searing, emptying into her like I was giving her everything I had left. She didn't speak for a long time. Neither did I. But as we lay tangled in sweat and ash, wrapped in the wreckage of what we had lost, I felt her hand close over mine. We are still, she whispered. Two. For now, I said. Her silence said everything. Not enough. Never enough. The trap was perfect. Silver chains soaked in holy water, wooden pikes hidden beneath damp soil, and in the center of the village square, pole, rough-hewn and reeking of pitch. I saw it too late, but I made my choice long before. They came in the dark, torches masked behind black cloth, boots padded with wool. The vampire hunter moved like moonlight, precise, silent, devastating. By the time I realized the sound in the wind was not wind at all, it was done. The queen lay hidden in the woods behind me, just beyond the chapel ruins. I could have run to her. Instead, I ran away, toward the danger. They wanted her. They took me. I did not scream as the chains burned through my skin. I did not struggle when they dragged me through the dirt like an offering. I only locked eyes with the hunter and smiled. Wrong corpse, I said. He did not answer. They bound me to the pole before sunrise. My arms stretched wide, wrists cracked, ribs broken. My shirt had been burned off long ago. They left my chest bare for the stake. The villagers gathered. They had learned, grown wise, hardened. They prayed not in fear, but conviction. Their priest held a stick like a relic. His lips moved in a ritual older than his god. And still, I did not fear. Because in those last moments, with my throat parched and my flesh seared, something woke in me. Memory. A heartbeat. It was night, 1,000 years ago or more. I wandered the catacombs of some forgotten temple, cold and full of blood, but hollow. Always hollow. I had been turned in war. No consent, no ceremony, just pain and flame. I fed. I survived, but I never felt. Until her kiss, until her hand closed around my throat and made me want to be ruled, until her moan cracked through my silence like lightning, until she whispered my name like it meant something. She never tried to tame me. She saw me, and I loved her. Even now, strung like meat for slaughter, I thought only of her. I saw her smile in the clouds. I heard her laugh in the fire. And then, I felt it. A tremor in my chest, weak, strange, human. My heart, it beat. Once, then again, I began to weep. Do you see? I whispered to the hunter. You'll never understand what that means. He raised the stake. My final breath drew in not air, but her scent. Wild roses and blood and wind. And in that heartbeat, I was not a monster. I was hers. The stake drove through me. I did not scream. I died smiling, not because I was brave, but because I had loved. I felt the stake pierce my chest. There was pain, yes, but brief. The body fell so easily. Bones crack, muscles split. The flame of life, however unnatural, burns out in a blink. I should have fallen into silence, but I didn't. Instead, I drifted. There is a place between death and nothing. A gray sea with no sky, no floor, no horizon. I woke there, or perhaps unwoke, weightless and disembodied. I had no limbs, no breath, no voice, only thought, only memory, only her. I felt her grief before I remembered my name, like a distant storm rumbling through the fog. She wept in silence. She tore the trees apart. She kissed the stone where they burned me, and with every sob, she pulled me backward, held me in place, refused to let me dissolve. The gods may judge, the dead may drift, but she would not let go. You are mine, her voice echoed, not through ears, but across the hollow of my soul, and I will not lose you again. The dark pulsed around me. It grew thick, dense. Shapes moved, other lost ones, perhaps, or worse. 1,000 whispers coiled like snakes beneath the veil. He doesn't belong here. He's tethered. He burns with her name. He bleeds memory. They tried to drag me deeper, but I clung to the memory of her breath in my mouth, of her body moving with mine beneath blood-warm stars. I clung to the pain in her eyes when I was taken. I clung to the heartbeat she gave me. And in doing so, I remained. I could not return, but I would not pass on. So I became something else, a soul without flesh, a shadow with memory, a whisper that will not fade. I saw her then, in the real, in the now. The queen knelt before the ashes, fingers dipped in the soot of my bones. Her lips moved in silence, her heart. I felt it, weeping, raging, searching. A tether shot through the veil, a red cord of memory, and well, she was calling me back, not to life, but to her, and I answered. I am not gone. The wind howled across the ruined chapel, the roses on my grave loomed black, and the queen, my queen, lifted her eyes to the sky with a breathless smile, because she had felt me. You've just tasted a drop of the dark. Ready for more? Subscribe to Amorous Sanctum and let the shadows pull you deeper into a world of forbidden fantasy and wicked romance. Have a dark desire you love to see unfold? Whisper it in the comments. We adore your imagination. Until we meet again, don't be afraid to crave.